Chapter 10.
And what page? What page?
Is
70
on the PDF.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And Snog has just agreed to help Heimdall and Harold escape. Harold had worked magic on Snog's nose, and Snog acted as a divergent. And the three of them were separated. Escaping the dungeon, Heimdall and Harold are discovered by giants, and a fight ensues. The giants are killed. The two reunite with Snog, but are far from where they need to be. And that brings us up to Chapter 10.
Chapter 10. The thrall's hut proved a crazy pile of basalt rocks chinked with moss. The door sagged ajar. Inside it was too black to see anything. Shay?
I'm still getting to chapter 10, sorry.
Uh-huh.
I was gone and back again because my mic wasn't working. And so I'm just catching up. One second. Okay, can you start that again? Sorry.
Sure. The thrall's hut proved a crazy pile of basalt rocks chinked with moss. The door sagged ajar. Inside was too black to see anything.
Snug, can you take a little of the spell off the sword so we can have some light?
He held it out. Schnurg ran his hands up and down the blade, muttering. A faint golden gleam came from it, revealing a pair of brooms in one corner of the single-room hut. One was fairly new, the other an ancient wreck, with most of its willow twigs that had composed it broken or missing.
Now, I need the feathers of a bird, preferably a swift, as that's about the fastest flyer. There ought to be some around.
On roof, I think. You wait. I get.
He slid out, and they heard him grunting and scrambling up the hut. Presently he was back with a puff of feathers in his scaly hand. Shay had been working out the proper spell in his head, applying both the law of contagion and the law of similarity. Now he laid the brooms on the floor and brushed them gently with the feathers, chanting,
Bird of the South, swift bird of the South, lend us your wings for a night. Stir these brooms to movement, O bird of the South, as swift as your own, and as light.
He tossed one of the feathers into the air and blew at it so that it bobbed about without falling.
Verdfulner, greatest of hawks, I invoke you!
Catching the feather, he stooped, picking at the strings that held the broom till they were loosened, inserting the feathers in the broom and making all tight again. Kneeling, he made what he hoped were mystic passes over the broom, declaiming,
Up, arise, bear us away! We must be in the mountains before the new day. Now, I think we can get to your Steinbjorg soon enough.
Schnurg pointed to the brooms, which in that pale light seemed to be stirring with emotion of their own.
You've through air?
With the greatest of ease. If you want to come, I guess that new broom will carry two of us.
Oh no.
Snug backed away.
No, thank. By Emot. I stay on ground, you bet. I go to Elagaru on foot, not break beautiful me. Do not worry. I know way.
Schnurg made a vague gesture of farewell and slipped out the door. Heimdall and Shay followed him, the latter with the brooms. The sky was beginning to show the first touch of dawn.
Now, let's see how these broomsticks of ours work.
What is the art of their use?
Shay hadn't the slightest idea, but he answered boldly,
Just watch me and imitate me.
He squatted over his broom with the stick between his legs and Hundingsbana stuck through his belt. He said,
By oak, ash, and broom, before the night's gloom, we soar to Steinbjorgen to stay the world's doom.
The broom leaped up under him with a jerk that almost left its rider behind. Shay gripped the stick till his knuckles were white. Up, up, up he went, till everything was blotted out in the damp opaqueness of cloud. The broom rushed up.
Look, how already the hosts of Surt move toward Ragnarok.
Shay glanced down at the tumbled plain. Sure enough, down there long files of giants were crawling over it, the flaming swords standing out like fiery particles against the black earth.
Which way is this mountain?
Heimdall pointed to the left.
There's a high berg in that direction, I think, though still too strong is the fire magic for me to see clearly.
Let's get above the clouds then. Ready?
Shay shifted back a little and they soared. Dark grayness gripped them, and he hoped he was keeping the correct angle. Then the gray paled to pearl, and they were out above an infinite sea of cloud, touched yellow by a rising sun. Heimdall pointed.
Unquestionably the Steinborg lies yonder. Let us speed.
Shay looked. He could make out nothing but one more roll of cloud, perhaps a little more solid than the others. They streaked toward it.
There must be an arresting. How do you stop this thing?
They had tried 3 times to land on the peak. Each time the brooms had skimmed over the rocks at breathless speed.
I'll have to use a spell.
He swung back, chanting.
By oak, ash, and yews, and heavenly dew, we've come to Steinbjorgen, land softly and true.
The broomstick slowed down, and Shay fishtailed it into an easy landing. Heimdall followed, but it plowed deep into a snowdrift. He struggled out with hair and eyebrows all white, but with a literally flashing smile on his face.
Warlocks there have been, Harold, but never like you. I find your methods somewhat drastic.
If you don't want that broom anymore, I'll take it and leave this old one. I can use it.
Take it if it pleases your fancy. But now you too shall see a thing.
He put both hands to his mouth and shouted.
Yo-hoo! Goldtop! Yo-hoo! Goldtop! Your master, Heimdall Odinson, calls.
For a while nothing happened. Then Shay became aware of a shimmering polychromatic radiance in the air about him. A rainbow was forming, and he was in the center of it. But unlike most rainbows, this one was end-on. It extended slowly down to the very snow at their feet. The colors thickened and grew solid as they blotted out the snow and clouds and crags behind them. Down the rainbow came trotting a gigantic white horse with a mane of bright metallic yellow. The animal stepped off the rainbow and nuzzled Heimdall's chest.
Come, I grant you permission to ride with me, though you will have to sit behind. Mind you do not prick him with Hundingsbana.
Shay climbed aboard with his baggage of sword and broom. The horse whirled around and bounded onto the rainbow. It galloped fast with long, reaching stride, but almost no sound, as though it were running across an endless feather bed. The wind whistled past Shay's ears with a speed he could only guess. After an hour or two, Heimdall turned his head.
Sverre's house lies below the clouds. I can see it.
The rainbow inclined downward, disappearing through the gray. For a moment they were wrapped in mist again, then out, and the rainbow, less vivid but still substantial enough to bear them, curved direct to the Bonders' gate. Goldtop stamped to a halt in the yard, slushy with melting snow. Heimdall leaped off and toward the door, where a couple of stalwart blondes stood on guard.
Hey, can I get something to eat?
Time is wanting.
Over his shoulder, disappearing through the door to return in a moment with horn and sword. He spoke a word or two to the men at the door, who ran around the house and presently were visible leading out horses of their own.
Heroes from Valhalla, set to guard the Jarlhorn while the negotiations for my release were going on.
He snatched up the horn and vaulted to the saddle. The rainbow had changed direction, but lay straight away before them as Goldtop sprang into his stride again.
Couldn't you just blow your horn now without waiting to see Odin?
Not so, Warlock Herald. The Wanderer is lord of gods and men. None act without his permission. But I fear me it will come late. Late. Hark, do you hear? Nay, you cannot. But my ears catch a sound which tells me that Garm is loose, that great monster.
Why does it take Odin so long to get to Hel?
He goes in disguise, as you saw him on the moor, riding a common pony. The spaewife Grua is of the giant brood. Be sure she would refuse to advise him, or give him ill advice, did she recognize him as one of the Aesir.
Goldtop was up out of the clouds, riding the rainbow that seemed to stretch endlessly before. She could think only how many steaks one could get from the huge animal. He had never eaten horseflesh, but in his present mood was willing to try. The sun was already low when they pierced the cloud banks again. This time they dropped straight into swirls of snow. Beneath them and around them Shay could make out a ragged, gloomy landscape of sharp black pinnacles, too steep to gather drifts. The rainbow ended abruptly, and they were on a rough road that wound among the rock towers. Goldtop's hoofs clopped sharply on frozen mud. The road wound tortuously, always downward into a great gorge, which reared up pillars and buttresses on either side. Snowflakes sank vertically through the still air around them, feathering the forlorn little patches of moss that constituted the only vegetation. Cold tore at them like a knife. Enormous icicles, like the trunks of elephants, were suspended all around. There was no sound but the tread of the horse and his quick breathing, which condensed in little vapor plumes around his nostrils. Darker and darker it grew, colder and colder. Shay whispered. He did not know why, except that it seemed appropriate.
Is this Hel of yours a cold place?
The coldest in the 9 worlds. Now you shall pass me up the great sword that I might light our way with it.
Shay did so. Ahead, all he could see over Heimdall's shoulder now was blackness, as though the walls of the gorge had shut them in above. Shay put out one hand as they scraped one wall of the chasm, then jerked it back. The cold of the rock bit through his mitten into his fingers like fire. Goldtop's ears pricked forward in the light from the sword. They rounded a corner and came suddenly on a spark of life in that gloomy place, lit by an eerie blue-green phosphorescence. She could make out in that half-light the tall, slouch-hatted figure of the Wanderer and his pony beside him. There was a third figure, cloaked and hooded in black, its face invisible. Odin looked toward them as they approached.
Hi. Muggin brought me tidings of your captivity and your escape. The second was the better news.
Heimdall and Shay dismounted. The Wanderer looked sharply at Shay.
Are you not that lost one I met near the crossroads?
It is none other, and a warlock of power is he, as well as the briskest man with sword that I ever saw. He is to be of my band. We have Hundingsbana and Head. You won that for which you came?
Enough, or near enough. Myself and Vidar are to stand before the sons of the wolf, those dreadful monsters. Thor shall fight the worm. Frey, Surt. Uller and his men are to match the hill giants, and you, the frost giants, as already I knew.
All, Father, you are needed. The dog Garm is loose, and Surt is bearing the flaming sword from the south with the frost giants at his back. The time is here.
I know ye now. Uh-oh, that's not me, sorry.
That's Grua.
Laura?
Oh, sorry. That's me. I know ye now, Odin. Woe the day that my tongue...
Silence, hag! Blow, son of mine, then. Rouse our bands, for it is time.
Aye! Begone, accursed ones, to whatever place from whence she came. A hand
shot out, and Shay noticed with a prickling of the scalp that it was fleshless. The hand seized a sprinkle of snow and threw it at Odin. He laughed.
Begone!
Shrieked the spaewife, throwing another handful of snow, this time at Heimdall. His only reply was to set the great horn to his lips and take a deep breath.
Begone, I say!
Shay had a blood-curdling glimpse of a skull under the hood as she scooped up a third handful of snow.
To whatever begotten place she came from.
The first notes of the roaring trumpet sang and swelled and filled all space in a tremendous peal of martial, triumphant music. The rocks shook and the icicles cracked, and Harold Shay saw the third handful of snow, a harmless little damp clot, flying at him from Grua's bony fingers.
Well, I'm sorry you can't help me out no more than that, Dr. Chalmers. We got to notify his folks in St. Louis. We get these missing person cases now and then, but we usually find 'em. You'll get his things together, will you?
Certainly. I thought I'd go over the papers now.
Okay, thanks, Miss Mugler. I'll send you a report with my bill.
But I don't want a report. I want Mr. Shay.
The detective grinned.
You paid for a report, whether you want it or not. You can throw it away. So long. Bye, Dr. Chalmers. Bye, Mr. Bayard. Be seeing you.
The door of the room closed. Walter Bayard, lounging in Harold Shay's one good armchair, asked,
Why didn't you tell him what you think really happened?
Because it would be, shall I say, somewhat difficult to prove. I do not propose to make myself a subject of public ridicule.
That wasn't honest of you, Doctor. Even if you won't tell me, you might at least...
Bayard wiggled an eyebrow at the worried girl.
Who was indignantly denying that Harold might have run away from her maternal envelopment when the detective asked her just now.
In the first place, it wasn't so. And in the second, it was none of his damn business. And in the third, I think you two might at least cooperate instead of obstructing. especially since I'm paying for Mr. Johnson's services.
My dear Gertrude, if I thought it had the slightest chance of doing any good, I should certainly acquaint your Mr. Johnson with my hypothesis. But I assure you that he would decline to credit it, and even if he did, the theory would present no point of application for his investigatory methods.
Something in that, Gert. You can prove the thing in one direction, but not the reverse. If Shay can't get back from where we think he's gone, it's a sense that Johnson couldn't. So why send Johnson after him? It'll be a little queer without Harold for all his...
Wham! The outward rush of displaced air bowled Chalmers over, whipped a picture from the wall with a crash of glass, and sent the pile of Shay's papers flying. There may have been minor damages as well. If there was, neither Gertrude nor Chalmers nor Bayard noticed it. In the middle of the room stood the subject of their talk, swathed in countless yards of blanket-like woolen garments. His face was tanned and slightly chapped. In his left hand he held a clumsy broom of willow twigs.
Hiya! You three had dinner yet? Yeah? Well, you can come along and watch me eat.
He tossed the broom into a corner.
Souvenir to go with my story. Useful while it lasted, but I'm afraid it won't work here.
But you aren't going out to a restaurant in those garments.
Hell yes, I'm hungry.
What will people think?
What do I care?
God bless my soul,
Exclaimed Chalmers, and followed Shay.